All right. Well, we're live. Well, this is my first Facebook Live with Shawn Thomas and the Accelerators. I'm excited for it. I really am. And so let me tell you a little bit about myself first and our business. So we are your outsourced CFO. We're based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We are, we like to say Yo CFO. That actually works on our website as well. YoCFO.com, your outsourced CFO. Little Rocky Balboa thing there. But we've been around for going on 7 years now. And we've found a niche here in the marketplace for sort of that ongoing embedded CFO support for the small to medium-sized business world. So, companies from around 1 million up to 20 million in revenue. We support them with everything you can imagine a CFO internal would be doing, but really sort of helping drive the growth strategy, staying ahead of that for the owners and bringing that clarity, communication, and cash flow support that every CEO is really looking for as they grow their business. So that's what we do. And so I am really happy to be a mentor here and see if I could help some of your companies as they grow with questions. So I'll be doing these at least once a month. And so I guess we just can begin. And it is a beautiful Friday here in Philadelphia. A little cold, but beautiful to say the least. So first, I have a question from Heather Brockman. Heather says, Jeff, I have a mobile pet grooming business, and I know I need to keep adding mobile units in order to scale. And I have a challenge with balancing debt and growth. I'm working on getting my numbers established in a way to better understand, but when working with your clients, how do you help them get over the mindset of utilizing debt to scale? It's hard sometimes. And how do I really maximize bank relationships the best way? So Heather, I totally agree with you. Debt is a very difficult thing for many business owners. They don't like the burden of having to owe money back to banks. A lot of times these days, banks will not lend anything to you and other lenders without personal guarantees or liens on business and personal assets. So you're tying a lot up. There's a lot of risk there. They're first in line over investors, and they could lock up things like distributions on your business, depending on the risk parameters. So there is, I understand the concern around debt, but if you're looking to add mobile units, debt could be a very good thing for you because you have equipment that you are buying. If you're buying this equipment, banks are very apt to, banks look for collateral. So they're very willing to look at equipment, even get some equipment debt type functions, financing for those mobile units. That's a very great way for you to expand. Banks, like I said, will look at assets. They'll also want to look at profit and cash flow on your business. So you have to be profitable and have to have a decent cash flow along with collateral to allow this to happen. But the way to think about it really is, if I take on debt, does it create more revenue for me? Does it create more gross profit, more net profit, whatever the case may be for your business, that the metric that we're going to look at more closely? Well, it needs to translate into that. If it's not, then it's not effective for you. If you're plugging some holes on cost or catching up, or maybe you want to pay yourself more, I would not recommend using debt for that function. Equity is much better. So essentially to recapitalize your business, I would recommend equity. But debt is a great tool if you're just growing and you just need some equipment, maybe some more inventory, maybe, and you're creating more revenue with that debt. I highly recommend using it. Typically, one other piece about this is typically banks are harder to get large amounts of money from a letter of credit, line of credit or other avenues if you're too early in a business. Banks like like to see growth, and they like to see cash, and they like to see usually over at least $1 million, usually $2 million in revenue before you can get some decent letters of lines of credit. Hope that was helpful. Next question is from Tim. I believe it's Tim Schiffer. Tim says, Jeff, I have a new e-commerce business and a full-time job. Not uncommon in the entrepreneurial world. My goal is to create revenue in the business so I can quit the full-time job. Kudos. I love it. Quit the job. No, just kidding. Wait. What has been your experience when working with your clients as to how they get over that initial hump of being a one-person operation to finally scaling and building the company? What are things you see them do that I should look to start to do as I grow? Well, Tim, this is tricky. So when I started the business, I did exactly that. I was still in a full-time job. I was going to be leaving the job in about 3 to 6 months, but I was still in there, and I was looking at when I could take the leap. I luckily had a wife who was working full-time, so I was able to make that leap earlier than otherwise I could, and I jumped in and full-time and sat in a co-working space and started the business. So because I thought the idea was good. So here we are today. But I would say that it is very difficult to do that. And I think you really need to look at what your personal situation is. How much money do you personally need to live? How much profit and or, I wouldn't say as much revenue. I would say how much profit can you create in this business early on? Meaning how much, you could equate it to revenue as one person, but, do you need subcontractors? Are you doing something in the, if you're doing in the e-commerce space, do you have to buy and resell things? What does that look like? And then what is your profit so that you can see how much you can actually take home on a minimal level before you'll need to hire, use that operating capital to hire new people. So really the best thing to do is put together a financial plan. And when you do, be very conservative. If you think you can sell $20,000 in the third month, say you can sell $5,000 in the third month, because these things always take a lot longer than you think. And I'd just be very careful, especially if you're going all in and leaving that full-time job. But it's great. We work with many e-commerce businesses, and they also successfully have used Amazon to sell their products. So once you get big enough, Amazon really is a great vehicle to significantly grow your business. And I take a 15% chunk of your business in doing that, but their distribution network is massive, as you know. So good luck with that, and hope you are successful. Next person is Brian Wiggins. So Brian comes saying, my wife has a service-based business. Well, Brian, that's what ours is. So here we go. And it's just her right now. And she looks to bring in new service providers. How does she determine what she can pay them as she grows the company? Does she raise prices in order to create additional revenue for the compensation, or does she charge what she normally charges and just make it, as you say, quote unquote, work? How do we create that spreadsheet to see what the numbers look like as we grow? Well, this is back to sort of like the former question. You really want to do a pro forma on this. You want to do a projection. So generally in service businesses, there's a key metric you want to look at here when adding people to a service business. Yourself, you probably don't have a lot of overhead, so you can charge whatever it is that makes you comfortable, that you can bring home the bacon, so to speak. But as you grow, you got to consider employees, and they're going to want to be full-time, or in a lot of cases, if they're going to be a major part of your growth, and you need to consider a multiplier effect for them. So that's what we advise our clients all the time, that you need your direct, and we call them direct employees because they're working on the product, call it 70, 80% of the time, or what you're selling, the service you're selling 78% of the time. So those direct people need to be at a multiplier of 3. Now, you could be at 2.5 or so and still do well, but generally what we say is if you're hiring somebody for $50,000, you want them minimally to be bringing in, around $150,000 in revenue. That's a typical scenario you'll see for a multiplying effect on direct labor. That's service businesses. You could also look at it as a way of, adjusting your pricing. So if the market allows for it, I would certainly recommend doing some research and seeing if you raise your prices slightly, the market can afford it. A lot of the times people will tend to try to disrupt or get in a market and undercut competitors and then realize, well, no, I do it better anyway than my competitor because I'm doing this one extra thing or something, and that separates you. So you can match your competitor's pricing a lot of the time. If you're charging I'm just making something up here, but $1,500 a month for some kind of service you do, very often you'll see that you can go to $1,800 a month, and that's a 20% increase in your pricing. So that's substantial on your margins, especially as you're bringing in people, direct labor. So I would evaluate all that, put a pro forma together, test it maybe a little before you bring in people, see where you can go with that, see if the market will absorb it, and then really move forward and strive and get one good person first and slowly build. Hope that was helpful. So next here we have is Zach Knock. So Zach says, I'll have a company with vehicles and I'm trying to determine which is better, buy or lease and or using a fleet. From a financial aspect, what would be better? I'm just starting out, so cash flow is important and I don't have a line of credit to use to pay cash. So this is very early on, Zach. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't understand what your business is or what you're trying to do here, but fleets are very tricky. Fleets and or trucks are very tricky. There are inherently a lot of problems you can imagine with trucks, and they're the first that I can think of. We actually work in a lot of businesses that have fleets. We work with consulting remediation companies that use trucks and hazardous waste, things of that nature. We work with distributors that use trucks, manufacturers, and some of the things that are really, really difficult with trucks is drivers. So I'm going to get to your lease and buy question, but what's important to consider here is drivers. They're hard to find. The supply is coming down and the rates are going up. So it is difficult to find drivers, and you're paying anywhere from where you used to be able to pay $15 to $20 an hour for decent drivers. You're upwards of 25, in some cases 30 an hour to get the consistent drivers. There's a lot of testing with drivers, drug testing, things of that nature. There's a lot of things that you have to be careful with. So a point I wanted to make sure that you thought of here. But going back to your question, so it really depends on what your margins are, what your goals are with the business, so on and so forth. So if you have high margins, you'll have a little more room with these trucks. If the trucks are doing more local deliveries of things, you'll have a little more flexibility. You don't have to go out of state. When you go out of state, the Department of Transportation usually asks you for different licensing. If you're going in different areas of different states, you need interstate trucking licenses or permits and things like that. So, or it depends on what you're trucking. But so all of these things are considerations. It's not just buy or lease. But one of the other things are, what's your maintenance? Do you have a maintenance team on board? Do you have a friend who has a great maintenance shop that will charge you little for maintenance? Do you have insurance coverage for towing and things of that nature? Ultimately, trucks break down, And so when you're buying a truck, you create the asset and you can help that to leverage your business and you can resell it down the road. I would be very careful with that. Trucks and drivers and things and traffic, they break down all the time. There's problems. You have to keep them really in shape. Maintenance can be very costly. People steal stuff from trucks. I mean, it's a mess. So I would be very careful buying a truck unless, it's just critical for you to have that asset on your books as you grow. I'm just not sure. So leasing can tend to be better. Leasing, it's a little more costly potentially, but the leasing companies will usually wrap in a maintenance program and a roadside assistance and so on and so forth. It's a lot of things around trucks here. The used truck market is really weak right now. People are trying to sell trucks. They think they can sell for $15,000, $50,000, and they're getting 60% of that value. So really depends on your situation, but if you want to be safe, I like leasing trucks, 1 or 2 year leases if you can find them, just to help you to grow. That would be my advice. Dip your toe in with some leasing. If you get big enough, you have some good lines of credit, or you got some good equipment financing, maybe you can get some trucks, buy some trucks. But that would be my recommendation. Sorry, a little bit of a long tangent there, but I wanted to make sure you heard a lot of the pieces. So next person here is Nathan Peterson. Nathan Peterson says, what are the main questions an investor wants answered when investing in a company? Is there a template or basic outline for a pitch deck? And how do I best present projections when we are just starting out? So Nathan, this is the world of an entrepreneur and investors. There is a lot here. So I'll do my best to give you our thoughts on this. So investors are a tricky breed. Friends and family, you could say my company is worth $1 million and I need 100,000, and you'll get that money from friends and family for 10% of your company with no revenue. Just a great idea. I mean, maybe. You go to the investment world out there, angels or other people, and you're less likely to get that kind of valuation, and you're less likely to get those dollars. You're a lot riskier. So it depends where you're going, who you're presenting to, so on and so forth. But pitch deck is mandatory, absolutely mandatory. I would recommend that you outline, your space, your competition, why your business is different, why you think your business will scale, how fast will it scale, what are your margins? You have to get the financials out there. When do you plan on making money? Revenue depends on the type of business you're in. But just users in the app world or revenue, users or just revenue without profit is good in some businesses, like your SaaS business or your potentially, an online business. But if you're doing a product-driven business or other things, or even a service business, you really need profits. And you need working capital. So I would say that you want to put together a projection that could substantiate your valuation. So, we always recommend putting together a 5-year projection, pulling that back down into a present value of your company, maybe using a discounted cash flow. You could do a simple EBITDA multiplier, maybe at year 5. And pull that back into what you think your current net present value is. But, you got to present something, and then do it very summary to begin with, but back it up with reality. And people say, should we be really aggressive with our projections? Should we be really, conservative? It kind of depends on the space you're in. I would say Like before technology and SaaS businesses, they're very aggressive. There's a ton of money out there right now. You could probably put more, faster growth numbers in there. Service businesses are slower to grow, harder to grow, dependent on people, which is always tricky. So I would put a lower valuation there, and just be realistic with your growth numbers as best you can and support it, as I mentioned. So hopefully that's helpful. And that's it. Next question. So this one is from Lauren Saints. Lauren asks, I'm about to open a business bank account. Other than the obvious, such as interest rates, CC points, etc., what are some things to look for that you wish you would have known before you chose your bank? Anything after running a business for some time that caused you to switch banks for a better perk? Perk. So in the banking world, perks are kind of gone. There really are no more perks. I'm not a huge fan of banks as far as, a favorite bank over the other. I think it's really about what industry you're in, because some banks will have better tools for better industry, you're in. Better technology if you need easier technology and quicker reporting. Maybe you need a lot of ACHs, or you need a lot of wires to be done. There's certain banks have better what they call treasury management, excuse me, which is they're online tools that allow you for quick action to send money or receive money. There's always costs associated with that with every bank. Interest rates are when you're talking about checking, are really irrelevant. Nobody parks money in a checking or savings account these days. Not nobody, but very, very infrequently. For business growth, are you going to do that? You're going to probably look to use other vehicles. Also, I would say that it depends, of course, the business, as I mentioned. Are you in real estate? Is real estate a component of your business? If so, you want to look at banks that have a real estate arm and are willing to do some loans and or mortgages against real estate to help support your business growth, especially if you're an owner occupier. If you own the real estate and your business is in that real estate market, there are certain banks that are really attracted to that type of lending. I think it's more about what you're doing in your business and where you're going with your business and what type of business and what your future needs are for lending, rather than a bank account for a bank account. Because they're very similar these days. Fees are pretty competitive across most banks. So I feel strongly that you should consider your business lending aptitude. If you need a line of credit, like I said, mortgages on real estate or whatever that may be down the road, think about that in your bank choice. And some more information for you along those lines I think might be helpful is bigger banks bigger banks will lend smaller amounts of money. So they will, lend $25,000, $50,000, up to $100,000. Typically, they'll lend that, and it's an easier process. It's, sign an application, 2-page credit check, that kind of stuff, and they'll quickly approve you. Or they'll use SBA, the Small Business Association, which is a way banks today defer a lot of their risk. They use the government-backed SBA to give you credit lines and other loans up to 100, up to 250,000, things like that. They can take a lot of the risk off their plate, and so they're more willing to do that for the small business space. This gets into a lot of different topics, but we can go on this later on one of my next posts if you want to talk about lending and SBA versus conventional lending and so on. But I would take those into consideration with your business. That's really the best place to go when picking a bank. So I hope that was helpful. So next question, let's see. So Flora Sage. So Flora says, as you reach new levels in your business, how did you begin to show up differently? Show up differently. I like that. Meaning, how did you approach scheduling your day, working with your team, decision making? We all hear advice to show up as if it were a 500K a year coach, or make decisions as if you were already making 1 million a year in your business. So what did that look like for you in real time? Well, Flora, here's what I can say. If you're an entrepreneur and you're going to start your business, you need to be able to lead. Period. Doesn't matter. You need to be able to lead. And I don't mean make decisions, and I don't mean, have a great idea. I mean, if you really want to be CEO of your business and you need people in your business, you need to be able to lead the people. So it's really tricky on doing that. I struggled with it in the beginning. As I started, I was just one person, and I brought on one person with me. Now we're 8 people, and even 8 people is hard to lead. I can't imagine 500 people, but the key point there is you need to really sort of charge up the troops, keep them motivated, things like that. So there's one author I think I advise you to take a look at if you haven't already, Simon Sinek. I'm a big fan of him. I've read several of his books. The first one I read was Start With Why. The most recent one I read was Leaders Eat Last. So basically what he says is in Leaders Eat Last, he makes it clear that as a leader, you have to sort of be the last one. Leaders eat last. I mean, you have to be the last one to take the pay raise. You have to be the last one sort of out of the office when a big project is due. Stay there and make sure everybody's motivated. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, I'll be towards the end of the day and I'll be like, all right, I'm going to go home, see my kids. I'm going to leave a little early. It's 4:45, catch a train. And, people are saying, yeah, I got to stay and get some work done. I'll stay. And, I might leave, but, I had to come back and do something. I come back at 5 o'clock, everybody's gone. So people love working with me and the business is great and so on. But, it's still you're the leader. They're still depending on you to hang around and make sure the business is growing and so on. So that's what Simon Sinek talks about. And also Start With Why. He says, what's important for people to understand is, why are you doing this business? So why, not how or what? And he explains it really well with his 15-minute video about Apple, where he says Apple came to the market and said, here's why we're doing this. We're making a beautiful computer that that can really help you with X, Y, and Z, or with you personally. I don't remember the whole story, but basically he doesn't go into the mechanics of how it works and what the computer does. It has Microsoft Office, whatever. He doesn't go into all of that. He went into the why. So with your business, make sure your people understand where you're going. I mean, if I were to explain my why for our business as an outsourced CFO, our why is really that the small business space has lacked the strategic support of a CFO in the marketplace because it was just prohibitive before. And I frankly really enjoy seeing small business owners, take an idea and turn it into something that's sellable and ultimately scalable. I enjoy seeing that. It makes me feel good every day when we bring clarity to an owner and we say they finally understand their margins, or they finally understand their space, and they go, oh my God, like I finally get it. I know how I can grow this thing and financially understand it. It's very very appealing to me. I mean, I see it all the time. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing it to help these businesses. Of course, I want to make a profit and I want to grow this business. But that's why I'm doing it. So that's the thing you really need to get across to the people you work with. and remind them why we're doing it. And my team always comes up to me and says this all the time. They say, I enjoy doing this work. I love it. I don't care if you're crazy, Jeff, or you're over enthusiastic, or, you don't know what you're talking about. That's never going to happen, or, which happens sometimes. But it's all that they believe in what we're doing. And so my team's engaged. So that was a real long way of answering your question, but I highly recommend Simon Sinek. I also say that you should definitely have check-ins with your team to answer a little more specifically about some of your questions. I would do it once or twice a week, as far as, how we doing, internal problems, questions, how are the engagements going? Not super long meetings, maybe an hour once or twice a week, but staying engaged with that is helpful. And also make sure things don't slip through the cracks as your business grows. And one other small piece that, has worked a lot with some of the companies we work with is a book called Traction, Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS. There's a lot of coaches out there now doing that. That's a very popular system to keep all of your people focused on certain, what they call rocks, on a quarterly basis. That helps you grow your business as well and keep you focused. So just some overall thoughts there. But your question was very good. Appreciate it. And a lot of business owners deal with that. So then it looks like we have one more question. I don't know if anybody's live and has any thoughts. Happy to answer them too, but we have one more question here, and it's from Michelle. Oh God, I'm going to butcher this. Michelle Lahue Algayer. Sorry for that, Michelle, but that's her last name. So the question she asked is, we are looking to start the construction aspect of our company. Oh boy, construction, love that word. My plan is to hire subcontractors to do the work and need to hire someone to do the estimates and manage the subcontractors. I want to pay this manager per job. Would you recommend I pay an hourly wage, flat rate per job, or a percentage of the job? And when I'm looking to pay contractors and employees, how do I figure out the right compensation and be sure I keep margins and profitability? Well, Michelle, this is a big can of worms here. So I am... we've worked in some of this field before. We've worked with some companies who use construction in their business. It's a difficult route. What else do you do would be a question I'd want to ask you. I'm not sure you're on the live post or not, but what else do you do with your business that you're going to add a construction component? Do you do architecture, design? I mean, you're trying to do a design build focus. I just would like to know sort of why you're adding construction to your business. But I would also say that the part of adding construction is important. I'm sure you want to manage the whole process and so on. But finding a manager for that type of work is extremely difficult. I value what you're trying to do. You're trying to be variable. You're in your approach to build your business here and get someone to work, sort of per job and so on. But if you want a good person, you want a manager, I would definitely recommend hiring that person full-time in your business. And just make sure that these contracts are coming through and you have enough of these that you can sustain that person. Because in particular in that business, the construction industry, it's very hot right now. People are going to move around a little bit, and there's going to be some fluctuation there. So I would say that person could jump on you very quickly if they're paid per job. And since there are going to be many jobs that you want that person to run in your type of approach or philosophy in your business, you don't have time to train multiple people per job and so I really recommend you bring a person in-house. So I'd also want to understand the business metrics that you have. So how do you, what's your structure, what's your margin, how do you currently compensate people? If you're saying you're bringing on construction, there's another piece of your business that you have, obviously some profits to be able to do this. So there's a lot I have to pull apart here to understand what you're trying to do. So I love the question, but I need a lot more information before I can really give you sort of an answer there. Other than bring a person in full time, that would really be my recommendation. So I see a couple people have joined. Welcome. Give a shout out to Christy Barlotti. Hi, Christy. I don't, those were all the questions. I think we had about 7 or 8. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's been a good one so far. And if there's any live questions, I can sort of answer those and quickly here before we're at about, 35 minutes. If there aren't any, we've really gone through a bunch. Generally, if when you think about your business, this is as a reminder, always think about, do I have enough operating capital, to hire the next person, get to the next level? If I don't, I don't have enough profit. How do I get lending together? Am I too early for bank lending? Am I willing to put my house up as a guarantee or personal guarantee on that lending? Can I go to friends and family for equity? Or angels? All those things are considerations. Everybody's going to want to see financials, and so just keep all of that in mind. One last thing before I go. I don't see any other questions popping up here, so this will be we'll end it here today. But one other quick thing, a book I love, since it's my first Facebook Live, Go Giver by Bob Berg. I highly recommend The Go Giver. It's like 140 pages, big type. You could read it in 5 hours. You can read it over a weekend. I highly recommend it. It's super motivating. It tells you about how to, we run our business on it, and it's a great book, and it helps you think about how you want to build your culture in your business as well. So we've touched a lot of topics. There are many more. Happy to jump on that in the future. And this has been great. Thank you, Sean, for having me here. Looking forward to many more of these, and we'll be see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody. Bye.